Philadelphia has a lot of charm and what seems like unique character, but if you dig down, you'll find a lot of what makes Philadelphia great was actually made, at least in part, in the Boston area. We've dug into this issue and we're excited to do a special Revolutionary Spaces Spotlight report from Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia called The Taker State. First of all, Ben Franklin is always associated with Philadelphia. It's where he invented the lightning rod, a new type of stove, and even a flexible urinary catheter. But you know what Boston invented? Ben Franklin. You're welcome, America. Rocky Balboa is a Philadelphia legend. But did you know that Sylvester Stallone was inspired to create his boxing icon by Boston area boxer Rocky Marciano? Hoping to dramatize Marciano's rough and tumble Brockton, Massachusetts upbringing, Sly decided to set his movie in the roughest looking place on the East Coast. And, well, Brockton was pretty run down. Shooting in Philly was cheaper, and the burning trash cans were already there. Carpenter's Hall issues a David McCullough Prize for great accomplishments in bringing public attention and enthusiasm to American history. The prize is given out periodically, whereas in Boston, we put out a new David McCullough book every 2 years like clockwork. I mean, this guy's catalog is immense. Of course, there's the Philly cheesesteak. Most people don't know this, but the Philly cheesesteak was actually inspired by Boston's clam chowder bread bowl. Legend has it that a young Philadelphian patriot visited Boston and enjoyed a clam chowder bread bowl so much that he brought one for all his family back home. However, when he got home, it was a soggy bread mass with brown gross meat and congealed dairy. But it was still better than most Philly fare. They tried to reconstruct it with yellow cheese food instead of cream, and by replacing our fine, decent, majestic clams with trash cow meat, and a mid-Atlantic staple was born. The Liberty Bell. It's easily the most recognizable symbol of Philadelphia and arguably of America. But nobody even cared about the Liberty Bell. They didn't even call it the Liberty Bell until abolitionists from Boston and New York adopted it as a symbol for the anti-slavery cause in the 1830s. Due to its biblical inscription, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Philadelphia was sitting on what would become one of the most cherished symbols of American freedom, and it took Boston and New York, sworn enemies, for all time to come together to help them figure out how to talk about it. And what did Philly do with this newfound national treasure? They broke it. Philadelphia City Hall is famous for being the largest municipal building in America. But did you know that they got the idea for a city hall like that from Boston? No, not that one. Yeah, this one. The old City Hall of Boston was built way back in the 1860s, making it one of America's first buildings in the French Second Empire architectural style. Philadelphia thought it was cool and made their own. And I don't want to say that they're compensating for something, but look at this thing. Boston replaced its City Hall with this thoroughly and cool utilitarian gem and devoted our old City Hall building to serving steaks, unsullied with cheese. Philadelphia had the first Continental Congress and the second one. But why did those even happen? Little something called the Boston Tea Party. Ever heard of it? Yeah. After we destroyed 342 chests of tea by dumping them into the harbor, that's part of the ocean for you river people, Great Britain passed the Coercive Acts, shutting down Boston's port, occupying it again, and dissolving the government. And weirdly, funding the Catholic Church in Quebec. Anyways, the whole reason for the Continental Congress in Philadelphia was because we acted up. We created the problem. All Philadelphia did was try and solve it. Edgar Allan Poe was born in Boston, but wrote A Telltale Heart and other works while living in Philadelphia. Philly boasts the Edgar Allan Poe National Historic Site, and I think it's pretty clear that Philadelphia was inspired by Boston to steal credit for Poe from Baltimore. They have so little. Boston has Faneuil Hall, which clearly inspired Philadelphia's famous hall, Darrell Hall from Hall & Oates. I'm watching your every move. Philadelphia's music scene has clearly been inspired by Boston. The Roots were obviously inspired by the Hub's own New Kids on the Block, whereas Boyz II Men obviously owe a huge musical debt to Godsmack. My producer Matt was against that joke. He said, no one remembers Godsmack anymore. And I said, well, that's good. We could all just really use some good news right now. And apologies to Michael Bivins for that one. We know you worked hard. And finally, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is a classic fish-out-of-water story of a lower-class kid from West Philadelphia who finds himself surrounded by the upper class. Clearly just a simple switcheroo of the classic Boston story of Frasier Crane on Cheers. From Carpenter's Hall, this has been The Taker State.